Welcome to the channel. If you read the short description, you know that I've traveled over 100 countries, and what I've always found interesting is how American news and stories of American interests are always talked about abroad, both by foreign media, both by foreign dignitaries, and just social media accounts overseas. So the purpose of the channel is to really go outside of our own echo chamber, because in America we have echo chambers on the right and the left, but then the world itself is its own echo chamber. So we're going to take a look at how we're talked about abroad with very high-level American stories to see what the world is saying. Sometimes they're talking trash. Sometimes they're covering angles of stories that we don't cover in the U.S., both on the right and the left, and could make you angry, could just be insightful. So let's take a deep dive into various stories. Today, we're going to be covering the Trump's planned or proposed plan to take over the Gaza Strip. What's being said about it primarily in the Middle East. All right, the first paper we're going to look at is coming from Lebanon. Let me just get this right off the top. We are going to cover stories from around the world, 100 plus countries. I do not speak 100 plus languages. I will mispronounce some of this stuff. Feel free to correct me in the comments if you like. Just getting that all off the top. Now, the newspaper is Al Nasra. Now, Al Nasra is basically talking about the upcoming Arab League meeting, where the Arab League's been around since the 1940s. They're going to discuss how to deal with Trump's proposal, potentially come up with a counter plan. Now, their language is pretty sterile, like you would expect. They're just talking about the Arab positions rejecting U.S. President Donald Trump's plan regarding Gaza Strip and the displacements of residents. Not something you wouldn't expect. What was interesting about this article was they go on to talk about the Secretary General of the Arab League, referring to, and apparently this is very common throughout the Arab world, the October 7th operation as the Al-Qasha flood operation on October 7, 2023. Now, they're not being a proponent of it, to be clear, and they're blaming Hamas for the hardship that were brought upon its people. However, I just think the language there is, that's a really direct way of sterilizing a terrorist operation. I didn't even know that was there. I thought it was noteworthy. Now, moving on around the Arab world, let's go to Palestine. Let's see what the Palestinian territories are, or the Palestinian territories news are actually saying about this. Excuse me. So now this paper, and I'm not sure where within the Palestinian territories it's being reported as. It's just being listed as a Palestinian paper. So take that for what you are. Well, what I thought was interesting about this is they're taking a very non-neutral stance from Hamas's perspective. In fact, they go on to refer to Hamas as the Islamic Resistance Movement. They're talking about how the peace treaty deal or the ceasefire may be violated, not by Hamas, but by Israel. Talking about a treacherous bombing carried out this past Sunday by a drone attack on 3 men near the city of Rafah, which targeted police officers tasked with securing the entry of aid, resulting in the martyrdom of 3 of them. So the American translation there is 3 armed men were standing near probably an aid drop. Whether they were police officers or Hamas militants, not clear, but they were killed by an Israeli drone. So from Hamas's perspective, again, not condoning this at all, but that's their counter argument. One of the interesting things there was just to see how blatantly, again, the language used by these papers. If you go on to read through several other articles, the Israeli forces are referred to as occupation forces, and pretty much everything is seen through their lens as an aggression from Israel. Now, one more paper to look at, guys, because one of the major countries in the whole Gaza Strip displacement, movement of people conversation would be Egypt. This is Aram Online, a prominent newspaper out of Cairo. Now, they are again talking about the Riyadh summit, postponed till Friday. They're trying to get all the diplomats there they possibly can. Now, the Egyptians, for their part, I will say, reported on this from a much more neutral stance, objective stance. They're just saying in a meeting of Arab leaders in Riyadh, in response to U.S. President Trump's plan to take control over Gaza. They went on to say it will include the leaders of 6 Gulf Cooperation Council countries, along with Egypt and Jordan, to discuss Arab alternatives to Trump's plan in the Gaza Strip. Not clear what they're going to come up with, but I should note this here at the end. At the end of the day, if we don't end up taking over Gaza, and this was all a negotiating tactic by Trump, it's kind of brilliant. He wanted leverage for these Arab countries to step up and do more for the 2 million displaced people, and you could call it a scare tactic, but it may actually work in getting them to step up. It's certainly getting them to have conversations they wouldn't have before. So, again, all of this being said, there's clearly a lot of chatter and a lot of uneasiness of a possible American takeover of the Gaza Strip. So, Arab countries are reacting, could see some positive developments. I'm going to follow what happens and the conclusion of this summit. We can talk about it in another video.